Hi, welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast, where we delve into the stories behind the stories. We're asking authors questions, some of them fun, some of them serious, and from their answers, you're going to learn things you never knew about the people who write the stories you love. My name is Patricia McLinn. I'm your host and designated question asker.
I'm Tawdra Kandle, and I'm an author who loves readers.
Now, let's start the show. Hi, and welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast. We're so excited that you are here visiting with us, and this week visiting with me and Tawdra Kandle. The regular listeners to Authors Love Readers often hear about Novelist Inc. And Tawdra is another author that I met through Novelist Inc. But more recently than some of them, we have been going back into old home week with some of these recordings, Tawdra. So you are fresh blood.
Oh, lovely.
So tell our listeners just briefly what kind of books you write.
Well, I write a lot of different types of books, but they all have in common romance. I am at heart a romance novelist, and I go through subgenres including new adult and small town and military and sports. But at the heart, it's always the love story.
All right, so that connects them all together.
Yes.
Let's do some fun questions to just let people get to know you a little bit better. And we'll start off with a classic. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
Why? Do you have an association with it? Is there something in particular?
It's really been, I would have said probably 12 or 15 years ago, green. Green was always my favorite color because I have green eyes and I tended to wear a lot of green jewelry. I lost both my parents to blood cancers 11 and 12 years ago, actually last week. And purple is the color that's associated with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And I did a lot of work with them after my parents' passing. And that's why I have purple hair. And so I have really kind of integrated purple into all of my branding and everything I do. And it's become kind of a comforting reminder and also a color of hope for the future.
That's a wonderful reason to love that color. Fabulous, although a sad reason at the start, but to build the hope from that, that's wonderful. Both of my parents have passed away, but they were each well into their 90s. And yet, even with that, I have said it's like having the roof of your life torn off. And you feel exposed to the elements in a way that you never had before, no matter how grown up you are, no matter how responsible and dealing with your own life. It's just...
It is. It's very true. It's very true. And I, still when I get good news or something happens, they're still the first people I want to call. And as I said, it's been 11 and 12 years. So it is, you're right. That's a very good way to put it.
Well, I'm so sorry you had that loss, especially so much earlier. It stinks. So we'll shift. What's a surprising job you've held?
I've actually only ever been a mom and a writer. So, I mean, I worked for my dad when I was in high school as in his law office. But other than that, I've been a homeschooling mom, and then I shifted right into authordom. So,
how about a song? Did you have any songs when you were growing up that were particularly important to you?
I loved just about all music. I grew up with two parents who were musically inclined, even though my father could not carry a tune in the bucket or play an instrument. My parents were really good about exposing me to tons of different music. And we did a lot of road trips and driving, so I would, get to hear different things. But I think when I think about my high school years, probably the defining song was Changes by David Bowie. That was my life, was Changes. So.
How about now? What kind of music do you listen to? Do you listen to music to write or?
Always. Yes. All of my books have playlists. They all have playlists. And probably my favorite band right now is Blue October, and I've been following them for about 10 years. There's actually a song that they do called Sway. And I have a book coming out next year that with that title, and it's very influenced by that song. So that's kind of the one I've been listening to a lot.
What about their music speaks to you?
Oh, it's just very, very, very real. It's very raw. It's not sugar coated, and yet there's hope in it, and there's happiness. There's a lot of grittiness, but then it turns around, and it's great. And as I said, I've been following the band. I go to all their shows, and I kind of feel the difference. The difference in going to shows when you're my age and when you know 30 years ago is that I used to say, "Oh my gosh, that guy is so hot and so good looking." Now I go, "Oh, he's so sweet. I just want to pat him on his head." And I have a very maternal feeling toward him. Justin, let me just make you something to eat and we'll sit down and talk and it's all going to be better. So
That's definitely part of the process of going through more years. That the thing I always get is, oh my God, they have 12-year-olds being policemen now. You know,
true, right?
how is that possible?
Did that happen? I don't know.
Oh dear. So,
Mm.
how about childhood books? Can you pinpoint a book or a series of books that you read and you said, "Whoa, this is I love stories." This is whether you specifically thought you wanted to write or not, but they just really addicted you to stories.
My dad had a thing that he read to me every night from the time I can remember until the night I left for college. We started with the Little House on the Prairie books, and then we went all the way up to reading, very complex books later on. And that was a great influence on me. But I think the ones that really seemed to hit me grip me the most would be Madeline Langle's Wrinkle in Time,
Mm.
Wind in the Door, Swiftly Tilting Planet. Um, they were they were just such amazing stories. I love that. So I really enjoyed those. Those gripped me. I was never told what I could not read. So I read Gone with the Wind when I was about 10 years old. I
Mm.
didn't understand a lot of it,
Mm.
but I read it, and that was another one that I was. I loved history, still love history, and that was a big influence too. And then as I started to get a little older, the Anne of Green Gables books that was wonderful too. Just so many.
Yeah. So, do you have, sayings that you I'll ask you a couple questions in here and you can play with them. Do you have, like, inspirational sayings that you particularly like? And do you have sayings that you remember your mom or dad saying a lot, and now you hear them coming out of your mouth?
Inspirational tends to come and go. It seems to be in the moment. I'll find something and it will just speak to me. I tend to think things come in waves. And so in 1 month, I think it was in April, I ended up seeing the exact same quotation in like 4 or 5 different places. So I knew it was something trying to tell me things. And that was why blend in when you were born to stand out. So
Ah,
not sure what that means, but it was given to me by several different people. So I'm going to take it and run with it. And as far as my parents, my dad's favorite saying was, "You can stand on your head that long," meaning whatever happens, you can get through it
mm.
because you can stand on your head that long. Of course, with a joke, because I could never stand on my head. I was not made that way. But he would, whenever I had something that I would say, "Daddy, I just want to, I don't want to do this. I want to come home. I don't want to be there." He would say, "This is how long you have. This is, you're going to be home this time. It's not that long. You can stand on your head that long." And we tend to tell our children the same
Yeah,
thing.
that you can get
You know,
through it.
you can get through
Wow,
it.
that's
Yeah.
that's terrific. Okay, my weird question. Are you left-handed or right-handed? That's not the weird question, that's the introduction.
Right-handed.
And on that hand,
Hmm.
is your ring finger or your index finger longer?
Oh, longer? It's a toss up, but I think it's the index finger. Yeah, it is. It's the index
Okay.
finger.
And then, can you see a difference between your right hand and your left hand?
Um, no, they seem
Still
they seem
same
pretty
thing?
symmetrical. Yeah.
I seem to recall from my, very brief, research into hand reading that what you are on your dominant hand is what you've made of yourself, and your off dominant hand is what you started with. So I think it's always interesting if there's a difference between the two. And then my I need to pin down my research a little bit better because I have read that one of the fingers being longer, which I can't remember which, means that you were exposed to more testosterone in utero.
Oh,
And what's interesting about that is it has effects, no, that there are correlations between that and um, spatial abilities, especially what I translate it to as packing. so, so I have my ring finger is longer than my index finger, and I'm a really good packer.
I,
So this is what this whole complicated thing is is about. I'm just curious about people's fingers.
well,
Uh,
yeah, I think I'm a very good packer, and that was borne out last week when another author and I were making our way to Cincinnati, and we had to pack my car, and it was like inches mattered, and we did manage to do it. So we did do it. So I'm going to say I think I'm a good packer.
yeah, well, see,
Yeah,
that's bearing out this research.
there you go.
What's your favorite taste?
Chocolate.
And a particular kind? Are you more dark or white chocolate, milk?
I love dark chocolate with nuts in it.
Almost healthy chocolate, right?
Well, it is healthy. I always say it would be worse for me if I didn't eat it. That's what I
Mentally, certainly, emotionally, right?
very.
Um, do you have a favorite spice?
Um, I am not a real spicy girl, but I love cinnamon, especially in the fall. I love, I'm a very seasonal person, which is strange because I live in Florida, but I did not grow up here. So the autumn is one of my favorite times of years, and I love uh, this like cinnamon with apples and yum.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Do you, as writer, we often have bad habit words. Do you have some? Will you share?
Right, yes, definitely. So I tend to say so a lot. Like, my characters will introduce something and say, use the word, so, so, quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
fairly, I'll say, I'm fairly sure that this is the situation, or she was fairly on time, or something like that. I go through, no, get rid of it, get rid of it. Those are my bad habit words.
They creep up on us, don't they? It's amazing. So, okay, I have this bizarre little desert island that you're going to be stuck on forevermore, and it has the ability to play movies, but only three. So, you're going to see three movies for the rest of your life. Which three movies are you going to take?
Well, I am a huge Marvel geek, and so I was thinking about which Marvel movie. Pretty much any Marvel movie would be fine, but kind of my favorite is Captain America Civil War. I've seen it many, many, many times, and each time I enjoy it, so I would say that one would be a good one. The second would be When Harry Met Sally, because I think that's
Oh,
really kind of the quintessential romance. I love that friendship that starts out as not a friendship, and kind of the idea that these people were really meant to be together, but it took them a long time to get to that
mm-hmm.
place.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be it. And I really wanted to go to a totally different place with the third, but I think I would have to come back to um, Sleepless in Seattle, which it is again another Meg Ryan, but
Mm,
uh, really it's another wonderful love story, but the two people are never together until the very end. Like they're never even in the same state, really, except for a brief moment here or there, until the very end. And I find that very sweet.
so those two, I really see the connection, and it's particularly kind of delayed gratification. So,
Yeah,
can you connect those to the Marvel to the, or it's totally appealing to a different part of your?
it is. Yes, it is. And I do, as I said, what I love best about the Marvel movies is the characterization. They're very, people don't realize how character heavy those movies are, but they really are. And I just love the development of, you have these two really heroes in this movie, in Iron Man and Captain America, who you can understand both points of view, and you understand why they're fighting each other, and where they're getting to a place where um, there's just no good, resolution. So
Mm.
yeah, yeah, it's unusual that it's not really a happy ending movie, and I am all about the happy endings, but
That is interesting. Do you rewrite the ending in your head? Do you give it a different ending from the movie?
no, no, because the other great thing about Marvel movies is I know it's not really the ending. I knew that it was leading to the Avengers movie that came out this past year. Not that was necessarily a happy ending movie either, but no spoilers. But I trust that there's going to be a satisfying conclusion at the end, at the ultimate end.
Have you had other stories or movies or books or whatever that you have mentally rewritten the end to?
Oh, tons, tons, tons. Yes, yes.
Do you remember any in particular?
Oh, good Lord. Probably I'm not a big Nicholas Sparks fan, and so anything that didn't have a happy ending that way. There was one that I went to see called Nights in Rodanthe, and that one I rewrote the ending. Yeah. Uh,
Good for you.
yes, yeah. A lot of television shows. There's television shows that I haven't liked the ultimate ending, the series finale, and so I said, okay, this is what we're going to say it really happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's start with a reader question, and it's a classic of where your ideas come from. What she says that I particularly like, she says, are beautiful ideas. And she mentions that she knows an author who dreams her stories, um, which would be really nice. I want to know how you order that up. But and then others who have characters who just kind of take up residence in their head. So, can you pinpoint where your story ideas come from?
From a lot of different places. I've only had one dream suggestion, and that actually ended up being part of my apocalyptic paranormal book that was the 15th book in a series that wrapped up this whole paranormal world. It was called Age of
Mm.
Aquarius. And I had the dream. I didn't know where it was connected. I didn't know where it was coming in. I had no idea it was for that book. And then everything else came together and it clicked. And I said, "Oh, those are the people who were in the dream. Okay, this makes sense." So
Oh.
that was it. Other than that, I seldom remember my dreams. I think I sleep very, very hard because I don't sleep much. And the rest of my inspiration, a good part of it comes from my children. I have three daughters who are 22, 26, and 29, and one is married, and the other two are not. And they give me a lot of fodder when I'm writing new adult. They give me a lot of, even if it's just the suggestion. But I also tend to be a shameless eavesdropper. So whenever
Oh,
I
yes.
yes in a place, I will listen in, and I like to say, "What if?" What if this happened this way? What if this person is here meeting somebody who she's been, I don't know, corresponding with for 5 years, and today's the time that she's finally going to, what would that look like? What would that be? And
Hmm.
go from there. So a lot of what ifs.
Yeah, I'm definitely an eavesdropper too, and I always think it's interesting when there's a group of writers and you're in a restaurant, and I always try to maneuver for the best viewpoint, but you can
Mm.
also see people maneuvering to get the best listening point. And then there are a few of us who are not eavesdroppers or spies, but they get the other seats. Okay, so you have this story idea. Now, what is your process to go from the idea to a completed book?
I usually have an idea. I will usually jot the rudimentary bones of it down somewhere, usually on a document in the computer, and then I let the characters live with me for a while, and that's great. They'll talk, and I'll write scenes that may or may not be used, but they don't always give me everything all at once. Sometimes they give me bits and pieces, and then during the writing process, I'm surprised when something pops up that I didn't know was going to be the case. But I do like to live with my characters for about 6 months to a year.
Mm.
Usually, I'm writing something else. Well,
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm always writing something else, but those characters are still back there saying, my turn's coming, and
They
and
are
then
nags, aren't they?
they truly are. And then I sit down and usually I try to just write a little bit about each character, what I know about them, the things that are important to me, things I don't want to lose, things I don't want to forget. Um, just bits and pieces. It's very seldom physical characteristics unless that is integral to the plot or to the characterization. It's usually their likes, their dislikes, their relationships.
Mm.
That's very telling. And then I just start writing, and I I usually get about halfway through the book, and then I start to map out what's going to happen between that point and the end, and not in any formal way, just saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, boom, so that I have a rough idea of where I am.
Now, with writing, you're writing romances, you're also in YA and post-apocalyptic. Um, do you do those come from sorta different places in your life? Do you feel different when you're writing those? If you're writing, say you're writing apocalyptic and you have an idea that's gonna be a YA romance, how are you working on one and kind of gestating the other? And, do they affect your moods? And I have about 40 other questions about that, but I'll stop.
Yeah, I tend to I started out writing YA paranormal romance, and then I after 4 books I shifted into contemporary and found out that I really 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 love to write adult books or new adult, and that I really really love contemporary. So um, I I had other books planned and begun in that same world, the paranormal world. So I would go back and maybe once a year delve into that world, and it was always a nice break. It was always, and it continues to be. Oh, this is fun. That the rules are gone. You don't
Mm.
really have any rules, so I don't have to. I'm not necessarily bound by all the dimensions and time and so on. Um, but the longer you write in a world, the more rules there are, of course. So um, I I would, and there's so many characters, and the direction this book went was that there were four. In the original set, there were the YA paranormal, and then we went into new adult paranormal that was a spin-off from characters from that, and then an adult paramystery set, which is a little lighter, but it's still in that same world, and the characters are still coming and going. So it's really fun. I don't get to do it as much as I did before, but I always say, well, I'll jump back into that. Usually around Halloween, it's a
Oh,
fun time.
that's cool that it's
It
around
is,
Halloween.
yeah,
Yeah, and your comment about the world's getting more rules as you go on, and the hard part is we do it to ourselves. I
that's
will be
true.
I'll be thinking, "Why did I do that 2 books ago, and now I'm stuck with it. Now I have to make that work." And then every once in a while, I'll be grumbling about that, and I go, "Oh, but I can do this and this and this." "Oh, okay." Then it feels really cool, but most of the
Yeah.
time I'm griping about it.
I'm always tempted to say maybe that was just a dream, or I because I tend to write. all of my books are in first person, sometimes dual point of view, but first person. I always say though too, you have to consider perspective, because the first four books I wrote were all from the point of view of the same girl. And so if there are a few differences going forward, she was a 17-year-old girl when that book started.
Ah,
And so when in the 15th book, which was the apocalyptic roundup that brought all of these characters together to save the world, um, and I said it. They actually brought that up. They said, but you said he was thus and so, and other people said, yeah, but she was in love. She was a 17-year-old girl in love. You can't really trust
ah.
what she was saying, and it's true.
I'm
Yeah,
filing that away in the back of my head to see if that's a get out of jail free card with any of mine. Can you look back and see, did publishing your first book change your approach to writing or your process at all?
definitely, definitely. I had books written before I published the first one, and that first one was just edited and polished to death. And the others have gotten tighter and easier to do as I went on. I would learn lessons. I would work with editors and beta readers and proofreaders who made me better because I internalized what they were saying.
Mm.
They would say, you don't want to do this, you do want to do that. And I think as authors, we need to take that and say, okay, how do I take this advice and make it better? And yeah, definitely, I've toyed with the idea of going back to those books at some point and just making a few adjustments. But in the end, they represent what they were supposed to represent.
Do you have other more recent books that you started and then they, for whatever reason, they weren't gelling, they weren't coming together, and then what do you do with those? I know some people who throw those out. That's I'm always appalled by that.
I don't. I think because I did not start writing seriously. I was writing all of my life, but I did not write a complete book until I was 40 years old. That I had all these stories that were just percolating and they were coming up, and I think that um, if I've a lot of those ideas have then come together. They haven't necessarily been what I thought they were going to be when I was 34 years old and jotting down the notes, but they tend um, to get thrown into the mix, and they come out, as a different book, but still um, a good supporting story there. It really is still part of it. So I have never started a book since then, since I was 40, and not finished it
Mm,
and not published it. So no, I don't have any half written or I have things that are started, but they all have dates where they're going to be released. So, they're coming.
okay, okay. And I think you're right about that percolating time. There needs to be, and that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons you were saying that you were writing other things, and I tend to do that too. But I will actually start writing, and because the writing is part of my thinking process, and then I'll jump from project to project, so you have some percolating time before you come back to it. And that makes a lot of sense for me. Some people have to, go start at the beginning and stick with the same thing all the way through. Do you find that there's a direct correlation between whether a book is more or less angsty slash or more or less fun to read and how it is for you to write? Are they necessarily tied together? So is a book that comes out fun and light, is that necessarily easier and more fun to write than a book that comes out more angsty and dealing with bigger issues?
Yes, definitely.
Mm.
I think when I was writing Undeniable, which is one of my paranormal new adults, I knew very few of my books end on cliffhangers. I think that one did, and then there's two cliffhangers in my keeping score, my sports series. But other than that, I'm not a cliffhanger person. I knew this. I knew what was going to happen at the end of this book. When I had planned it that way, I didn't realize how much I was going to come to care for the character to whom this was going to happen.
Ooh.
I realized I was literally at the end of the book writing it, sitting in my room writing it. And my husband at that point, our process was that when I finished writing a book, I would just be exhausted. He would take me out to dinner, and he was waiting. We had not eaten, and he was starving, and he was just waiting for me to finish the book. And I realized I was writing around because I did not want to come to that place. I kept going back and writing around it, and I finally said, "You just got to do it." And so I sat on the bed sobbing as
Yeah.
I wrote, and he was like, "Oh, this is going to be a 2 margarita
Yeah.
night." Yes, in fact, it is. But yes, that will happen. And the lighter books tend to be more. I tend to be a happier person when writing them. But the angst has its place. I don't set out usually
Mm.
to write books that are. I don't say, "Oh, I'm going to make people cry or make them unhappy." But sometimes those characters just have to go through a process.
So, do you have a writing routine? And then a reader asks if you have a special place a favorite place that you like to write. And I love that she asks if it has an inspirational view, because I choose to think that it means that she wants us to have an inspirational view.
Oh, I have no process. I really don't. I basically have a date that I know my book has to get to the next person, has to get to my formatter. So I back it up from that because I usually get with my formatter a year ahead of time and give her my list for the year, and so I know where it has to go before her, and I know I go from there. But I tend to meander in my writing and say, "Oh, I'll write 2 or 3 thousand words today," and then I get to within the 2 week time period, and I am just like 10,000 words. I'm just killing myself. But it seems that that's my process, whether I want it to be or not. I have tried and tried and tried to make it not my process, but there it is. I tend to write better under pressure.
I totally understand that. In other words, your process is deadlines.
Completely, yes. And I don't want it to be. I know I don't have another book that's coming out until the fall, and I have this wonderful wide open summer, and I think to myself, "Oh, I should be working on this or that." But we'll see. I'll be very surprised if I have 10,000 words in that book by the end of August, but that's okay too. That's all right. I've learned that it's okay. I have to acknowledge it and say this is what works for me, and that's okay. As far as place, I do not. I do a lot of writing at the kitchen table,
Hmm.
um, which means I'm right in the heart of my house as people are coming and going. Um, and if I'm writing a particularly heated scene, I do a lot of scrolling down so that when people walk past me, they don't look over my shoulder and see any words.
How about reviews? What's your relationship with reviews?
I appreciate all the reviews that I get. Um, I try not to read my reviews unless they are, unless I'm somebody sends them to me and says, "I just so that you know, I posted this review on the blog," whatever.
Mm.
It's wonderful to read good reviews, um, but there's not much I can do about ones that say, "Well, I didn't like the fact that she had red hair," or you know what I mean,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. There's just so much. So I'm always appreciative of them. I love everybody's take. I like to hear what people say, and it certainly is helpful. But I try not to live or die by them.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
And as a reader, I particularly like the reviews that don't just say, "I love this book" or "I hated this book," but
Yeah.
give some sense of why it was a good or a bad reading experience for them, so I can gauge whether that's a book I might like or not. And it doesn't have to be in great detail, it can
Yeah.
be, "I love this book because the humor really spoke to me, and it was, it was dry humor." So that's going to
Yeah.
that is more likely to attract me than something that said, "Oh, this was great slapstick." And I go, not as much my taste. So I love those reviews that reflect the individual's reading experience. So I love to ask some of these questions that the readers have sent in. I think they're so wonderful, including one that is, if you could write a book with any other writer, living or dead, who would you work with and why?
I think I might want to work with, and this is going to be a little repetitive, but with Madeline L'Engle. I just
Um,
love to read her things and her process. Or conversely, on the other end of the spectrum, Anne Rice. I would also be happy to write with her if she, asked if I would like to write with her. So
it would also be, I think I'd want to put a caveat in there that if they will open their brain and let me look inside, you know, so
yeah,
you can really know what's going on and how they get to where they get to. That would be
exactly.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, if these other readers ask, and I always put these together. I'm not sure that the readers would, but they are associated in my mind. So, reader one says, "How much does it bother you to find editing errors after your book goes live or is printed?" And the other reader says, "When the cover image doesn't match the character description, which is a pet peeve of hers, how does it feel for the author?"
Well, the editorial mistake that drives me crazy, and I immediately send it to my formatter and have her fix it and put it back up, and
Mm,
happily in the age of indie publishing,
yes,
that's a lot easier. The cover, because I am not a tremendously physically descriptive author when it comes to characters, there's not usually an issue with that. Plus, because I do have final say and a tremendous amount of input into my covers, that hasn't been an issue. And
that's great.
usually my covers come first. So I can go and look at it and say, oh, okay, well, he wasn't going to have this, but now he does. And it's easy enough. So
Oh, wow, your covers come first.
yes, yes. My covers usually come first.
And so do you have the title ready too?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely.
My cover designer would probably love you because I'm going, I don't know, it might be a long title, it might be a short title. She's gotten more used to that, but okay, so what other sort of communication do you have with readers? Do you get reader email? Do you meet them in person?
I do. I do. I have a very active private reader group. They're called the Temptresses, and we chat in that group daily. I do meet readers at local events, and that's a lot of fun. And I do get emails, and I will get messages every now and again. And of course, social media is wonderful to see tweets and posts. And so it's yeah, I love to chat with readers as much as I possibly can.
And you're also deeply involved with an event for readers, are you not?
Yes, yeah, the co-organizers and co-runners and slaves to Indie Book Fest, which is a reader-author event that takes place in Central Florida in August of this year. We're in our sixth year, and we have moved. We had moved to the autumn for 2 years, and then we moved back to the original dates in August for a number of different reasons. Some to do with weather, some to do with just people in schools and what was going to be easier for everybody. So
And tell people the URL, the website address for that.
it is indiebookconvention.com. INDIE book convention, all one word.com.
Okay, I'd like to give people a chance. If I just say, have I not asked you something that you would like to answer?
Oh my goodness. I don't think that you have amazing questions. So it's so much fun to talk about this.
I'm not done with the questions. So, one of them I'd like to ask is, where somebody who's new to your books, what's a good entry point to your works? What's a good book for them to start with?
Well, I have a 10 book series called Love in a Small Town. And there's actually a prequel to that I just released exclusively at the reader and author get together. But the first book in the series is called The Last One, which I know makes no sense, but the first book is called The Last One. And that's a very good entry point. That's a small town, and it's a good love story, and launches you into the town of Burton, Georgia. So
That's terrific. And I totally empathize because the first book in my murder mystery series is called Sign Off. And people are going, isn't that the end? No, the beginning. It's a sign off of her previous life. And so, and how about, do you have books? Because you write in these different genres, do you have books that even your loyal readers who follow you in the different genres may have missed or just haven't gotten as much attention?
Sure. My Crystal Cove series is kind of where the Small Town series began. It was actually a spin-off of that, and that is the posse, the plan, and the path. And a lot of sometimes people don't know about that. And I was at an event this past weekend, and actually one of my very best friends saw books I had on the bed and said, "Where did these books come
Oh
from?"
my
She had no
gosh.
idea that I had written. She had no idea that I had written the paramystery, and that's the death series. It's called Recipe for Death, and it's death fricassee, death a la mode, and death over easy. So she was intrigued that she didn't know I had even written these books. So yeah,
Do you bring most of your books or all of your books out in print?
all of my books are out in print. Yes.
Oh, good for you. I'm going to get there. I'm slowly working my way to it. I do the mysteries right away when they're released, and the romances I try to, but it's, they've gotten away from me. So where can readers find out more about you and your books?
Definitely on Facebook and on my website, which is really the absolute best place to find out. I have all of my updates and upcoming releases and where I'm going to be and all that kind of fun stuff is on my website. And it's I'm the only Tawdra around. So if you Google Tawdra, you're going to come up with at least 5 or 6 pages of me. So
Can you tell us, is there a story behind that name?
there is my. I was the first child in my family, and my father was in Vietnam when I was born, and so those days, no cell phones, no computers. My mom and dad decided they needed to choose the baby names before he went to Vietnam, and so my mother was sure I was a boy. The doctor had told her I was a boy, even though in those days they had no idea. There was no sonogram, there was no ultrasound. They didn't know. But the doctor said, "Oh, I'm sure it's a boy," and she knew it was going to be a boy, and she was going to name the boy after my father. So she wasn't worried. But my father liked the name Audra, and my mother had a sister-in-law for whom she did not care, whose name was Audrey, and she didn't want the sister-in-law to think that they were naming a daughter after her. So they took the T from my maiden name, which was Thompson, and put it in front of Audra, changed the U to a W, and came up with Tawdra. But my mother didn't care because I was going to be a boy. She went through all of the pictures that are sent to my dad while he was in Vietnam are of her pregnant, and they're captioned "Me and your son." When I was born in April, and when I was delivered, the doctor looked down, and the first words that I heard on this earth were, "Holy shit, it's a girl." Yeah, and my mother was stuck naming me that crazy name that she hadn't really been so in love with to begin with. So, yeah, so that's where the name came from. And, I've had people argue with me, say, "Oh, no, that has to be a pen name. There's no way that's really your name." I go, "Yes, it is. That's really my name." So, yeah.
How did you feel about it growing up?
Um, it had its drawbacks and its benefits. I love the fact that everybody knew who I was, but nobody could ever pronounce it at the beginning of the year. So people were always messing it up and adding letters to it or making it TWA and calling me Twadra or something like that. So yeah,
Sure.
I've seen a lot of creative spellings. Let's just say that. But overall, I've learned to embrace it. And I say I'm like Cher and Madonna. I just
Yeah, by first name only.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And now we get to do the either or rapid fire wrap up questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Braced? Okay. Spring or fall?
Fall,
Ice cream or cake?
ice cream,
Cruise or trekking vacation?
Trekking.
Cat or dog?
One of them's going to hate me. Cat.
Daisies or roses?
Daisies.
Hot air balloon or a train trip?
Train trip.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Winter Olympics or Summer Olympics?
Summer.
Nail polish or bare nails?
Nail polish.
Opera or show tunes?
Show tunes.
Binge watch or make the watching last as long as possible?
Binge watch.
Heels or slippers?
Slippers.
Appetizer or dessert?
Appetizer.
Day or night?
Night.
Paper plates or best china?
Paper plates.
House decorating or gardening?
Oh, house decorated.
Wallpaper or paint?
Paint.
Pickup or sports car?
Sports car.
Hiking boots or cowboy boots?
Cowboy boots.
And this is the last one. Grab the best first or save the best for last?
Save the best for last.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us, Tawdra. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed it too. I'm sure the listeners did.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Good.
I got to visit with you when we weren't at NINC.
Yeah, for a rare occasion. So thank you all for listening this week. Come back next week and we'll have another author, and you can learn more about the stories behind their stories and what goes into writing the books that you love. Until then, have a great week of reading. That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Until next week, wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye. If you like this podcast, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter through our Patreon page. With a small monthly donation as little as $1 a month, you can help with the hosting and editing costs that make the show possible. To thank our Patreon supporters, we offer them special bonuses. Find out more at authorslovereaders.com or at patreon.com/authorslovereaders. That's PATREON. We also hope you'll subscribe to this podcast and leave us a review wherever you listen to us. Both of those help more folks find the podcast. Of course, the very best way for other folks to find the podcast is for you to tell them about it. So we sure hope you will.